Well, we are so blessed today to have Dr. David Ault with us. And the extra great blessing is that we have him paired with his best friend from forever, who's Dr. Karen Drucker. Yay! Dr. David is an award-winning author, a spiritual teacher, minister, musical artist, leadership coach, and global education advocate. He comes to us from Atlanta, Georgia, where he is the senior minister at the Center for Spiritual Living. He also comes to us from Siem Reap, Cambodia, Bodh Gaya, India, and Panajachel, Guatemala, where he has established schools that provide free education, medical and hygiene assistance, agricultural and life skills training to children and young adults by the hundreds through his Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. His singular intention has always been bridging our collective forgetfulness into our great collective reawakening. Never before has such an intention been more needed than right now. So please help me welcome Dr. David Ault.
Oh, big thanks to Jennifer. Jennifer actually traveled with me to Cambodia a couple of years together, and so she's in my heart. She saw some of the beginning work that I did. And Karen's here. Oh my God. I was doing the math backstage. We've actually been friends almost 20 years, and we're still hanging out. So shows you what grace she has. Good morning. And Edward is texting me backstage. And he's saying, I'm on a train in Spain. Isn't it insane? And then he ended with, hey, I'm a rapper. So he sends you his best. Oh, good morning. So about 6 weeks ago, I got a call that a congregant of mine in Atlanta was entering hospice. And so when I was trying to get more information, it was his wife calling, and his wife didn't attend, but this gentleman did. And you know, when centers are somewhat large, you might not know everybody's name. And so as I was getting more pertinent information, she said, you're going to know Roger. He's the blind man, and I think he sits on the back row. And I knew exactly who she was talking about. Roger, this big, gangly, tall bubble of joy, had about maybe 10% vision, but he would make his way to the center and he would sit in his respective seat on the back row. And I could always look through the crowd because he was bald and he was tall, and there was like this ball of light just grinning with these black, dark sunglasses. And so she said he had had some seizures and he had fallen and it didn't look good, and could I come as soon as possible? And I said, I'm teaching, and as soon as class is over tonight, I will make my way there. So I did. I arrived at the hospice and met her. And you know how you can just tell when people are tired and exhausted? And intuitively, I said to her, it's okay if you want to go home. I can stay with Roger for a while. And she said, would you? I said, yeah. So she did. And I sat down with Roger, and I began to recall all of the things that he would tell me on Sundays. One of the things I do in Atlanta is when I finish speaking between services, I go outside. And then when people are making their way to the parking lot, I have full access, right? And Roger was always one of those who would make a beeline for me, and he would tell me all of the things that he loved about the service and the music and the this and the that, and I knew exactly what his favorite congregational songs were. So as he laid there in that bed, in that hospice bed, unconscious, and with the death rattle beginning, I placed my hand on his chest, and I could feel the reverberation and that rhythm of that rattle and that struggling for breath. And I just began to whisper in his ear, you did a really good job. I said, you did a really good job. It's okay. I sang in his ear the congregational song that he loved. And I became captivated by the by the rhythm and the placement of the fact that my hand sort of intuitively went right here. And I thought, isn't that amazing, this portal that we call the heart. It's the very first thing that jumpstarts life. It's where we enter into. And it's also the very thing that we exit from. Because when that heart stops. And I was moved, and I just hung out with him for several hours. And the next morning, I have an ongoing mastermind mentor session with an elder clergy member in Atlanta, and we get together faithfully every week, either in person or by Skype or phone. So I was sharing with him the next morning about sitting with Roger in hospice, and he looked at me and he said, "Aren't we all in hospice?" And I think it even shocked him because we went, "What?" And he goes, "Well, think about it. You know, the moment that we enter, we take our first breath, we're already making our way towards the exit." And so this thing called life is really sort of just degrees of hospice. And we both got out our phones because we're into etymology, and so we looked up the word hospice to see what the origin was, and we discovered it had a dual meaning. And the origin of hospice, like hospital or hospitable, means guest or host. And as we sat there and I began to contemplate this idea that we're all in hospice, that this thing called life is really learning that we're not the host, that this thing, our planet Earth, it's our host, and that all of us are guests. We are our mutual opportunity guests, and how we treat one another on this journey is indicative of the way in which we treat ourselves, but also in the way in which we understand our purpose and why we're here. And so as I began to think about this portal and the fact that it's the cornerstone, it's the foundation, it's the intuitive guidance, it is everything that you and I could possibly need with regards to whatever is going on in life. This portal, it contains everything. And how, for some reason, as a species, we have migrated to this portal up here. And it's this portal up here that gets in the way. It's the thing that is domesticated. It's the thing through absorption that we look at and we begin to make these agreements or collect these beliefs that we can't. And with this portal, which is life itself, and this experience that we're all having in hospice, is something that is completely within the realm of our power to determine what it's going to look like. And how do we really feel about that? When we say those big visionary things, do we get pissed off by that? Or do we go, yeah? And it always reminds me of the fact that our founder, Ernest Holmes, said the world is a mirror, and it's always reflecting back to us. You know, so when we look at the world and we couple our vision, the way in which we see the world, with the desire of this portal, this heart, we're always being shown what it is that we desire. Always. Someone is always a prototype. Someone is always a reflection of the very thing that we're saying that we want. And so when we see success around us, and that's very subjective for all of us, but when we see it, we have the opportunity, instead of begrudging it or criticizing it or being sarcastic about it or letting our fear get in the way, to look at that thing and to understand this is a template of what's possible for me. And so there's this childhood game called tag. Any of you play tag? Well, I play tag a lot, but it's Thanksgiving, appreciation, and gratitude. So when I see the thing that is a reflection of what I want, I tag it, and I say, why not me? Why not me? If I understand that we're all this collective one, if I understand that there is no limitation, then what someone is revealing through the avenue of their expression of success is simply the universe beckoning me to examine that more closely for myself. But if I resist it, or if I listen to those subjective themes and voices inside of me that say I can't, that are migrated from here, then I miss that opportunity. And yet that opportunity will keep coming around and keep coming around and keep coming around. And if I'm not self-aware, if I'm not curious, as to what it is within me that's triggering things, if I'm not curious as to why I feel the marginalization of self inside of me, if I'm not willing to examine that, then every single time it comes back around, I grow a little bit more bitter, a little bit more bitter, a little bit more bitter. And then I join the bitter club, and there's lots of people involved with that. And that's one way to do life. But when we think about the joy of living, which is the topic for today, it's the joy of living. It isn't the joy of management. It isn't the joy of prevention. It isn't the joy of securities and investments. It's the joy of living. Living. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, "You must do the thing you think you cannot do." Think about that. My favorite word in that whole quote is the word must. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. You must expand the degree of livingness through the portal of our heart while we're all in hospice. We must do that because it's what we are. It's the inherent part of us. Have you ever tried to suppress something that's inherent? And so think about that. That's the nagging voice. That's the whisper. That's the thing that keeps circling back going, now. We must do the thing we think we cannot do. And so if we have this limited portal of time between entry and that first heartbeat to the last heartbeat, what are we going to do? How are we going to navigate ourselves? How are we going to give ourselves the brilliance and the alignment, the soul's alignment to do those things that we think we cannot do for the sole purpose of discovering that you and I are far more capable and powerful than we've ever given ourselves credit for? But how are you going to do that? So we have to really look and see success and go, why not me? When we see someone who exemplifies wellness in the way that we would long to have wellness, again, instead of getting around other people and pointing and being catty about it and cynical and looking at them and making comments, tag them. Tag them, not physically scare them or anything, but tag them in your mind and go, why not me? There is countless stories of people who have done great things with this physical instrument that is beyond what the rest of the world says is capable. Tag it. When you see people who are expressing intimacy in a way that you and I long to have that. I remember years ago when I wanted that for myself, and I would always see these people out there going, mwah, 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 Snooky Yookums, I love you so much, mwah, mwah. And I'd be like, get a room. But then I realized, oh, that's what I want, right? So I can look at that and I can say, why not me? If they can create that, so can I. And so when I began to understand that, then I became more fascinated by what does this philosophy teach us about these themes, this realm of subjectivity? Ernest Holmes, our founder, said that the subjective mind is the warehouse of all thought. That still blows me away today after being in this ministry for 30 plus years. That blows me away. It's the warehouse of all thought, not just my thought, but the thought of all sentient thought is there. That means that the thought of genius is there. That means that the thought of hypercynicism is there. The I can and I can't. And then it's which voice, which thought do I continue to shop for and acquiesce and infiltrate into my being? But it's all there. And the thing that's so beautiful about that, and what I always remind my students is, please don't fall under the assumption that when you start to study or become spiritual, that all your problems go away. It's not that they go away, it's that our relationship with them changes. Those thoughts are still there because, again, it's the warehouse of all thought. And so I began to look at them and I go, I get it now. Those are the things that come into my path to help me spiral up. Because if I wished it would go away, if I wish something would just make its exit, then I'm missing the point of what this journey is. And don't you love Gloria Steinem? She said, the truth shall set you free, but first it'll piss you off, And so you're like, yeah, I just want it to go away. And so after 13 years of being in Cambodia, all of those years, and building what eventually evolved into 2 campuses, into 2 schools, I felt like all the systems were in place, and I could feel that thing, the call of something more inside of me going, dare I try to replicate this in other countries? Dare I go to some of the most rural places on the planet and see if I can start all over again now that I've got these up? And that's that thing, And so India kept coming to my mind. So last August, I ventured to India for several weeks, and I was just on this sort of intuitive scouting expedition. I went to lots of places and was bombarded, as you know, if you've been there, by all of the chaos and the smell and just the relentlessness that's all around you, the stimulus. But I finally managed to get to a town called Bodh Gaya. And Bodh Gaya is famous because it's where the Bodhi tree is, that the Buddha gained enlightenment. Now, it's not the actual tree, it's the 4th generation graph. But hey, it's still the Bodhi tree. And it's magnificent, and people come from all over the world just to sit in the little area behind it. And it was a remarkable, quiet pocket of haven, of solace in the midst of a chaotic country. And so as I was there, I had made these agreements that if this was a place, if I came upon a place where I was supposed to establish and try for a new school, that it would be made known to me. I would have these moments of inspiration and clarity. And so people are constantly trying to talk to you. And this one Indian young man kept trying to have this conversation. And I was trying to be polite but disengage, and he wouldn't let go. And so we finally start to talk. And he says, do you want to see the cave? I said, what cave? And he said, the cave. The cave where the Buddha sat in for 7 years. It's the cave where Siddhartha, before he gained enlightenment, hung around all these ascetics, and their whole philosophy was to sacrifice one's self, and they would eat just fragments of rice and just enough water to maintain life, but they would sit and they would beg and they would hang out. Well, this particular cave was the actual cave where he hung out for 7 years. He goes, do you want to see the cave? I'm like, yeah. And so he was going to pick me up on a motorbike the next morning at 5:30 a.m. And I'm like, cool. And so I'm in my little ashram room, and I'm like, what did I just agree to? I don't know who this is. And so as I'm calculating all this, I'm just like, do it. And so the next morning, it's dark, and it's that coolness of the morning is the only relief from the oppressive heat. And so we're riding on this motorbike for 20, 30 kilometers outside of the little township. And we get to the base of this mountain. He goes, it's very good. You're the first person today. He goes, this is very good. And we start to climb up halfway to this small mountain where the cave is now surrounded by a temple. And on the way up, he kept going, this is very good. This is very good. So we get there, and literally, I was the first person, and the monks at that particular Buddhist temple were just doing their morning rituals, and I was able to go into this cave, which was no bigger than a large kitchen pantry, and to sit there. And I had probably a good 20 to 25 minutes by myself in this cave. It was an extraordinary experience. And then about 25 minutes into it, I started to hear this cacophony of sounds and people. And I crawl out of the cave, and there are busloads from all, I think it was from Sri Lanka, but it was because it's a Buddhist pilgrimage. So they come by the thousands to try to get into this cave, which only seats 1 or 2 people at the same time. And he went, it's very good you are first. And now I knew, yeah. And so we started to crawl back down the mountain to get back on the motorbike, and that's where I really saw the mayhem of this, because the beggars and the children come out in droves, and while these busloads of tourists are trying to make their way to the cave, they're just being grabbed at and grabbed at and grabbed at. And it was a typical scene of India. And I got on the little scooter bike, and we started to head back into Bodh Gaya, and all of a sudden he stopped the bike and he pulled over the side of the road. I went, okay. He said, I want to show you something. I said, what's that? And he goes, come. We walk across the road and we go down this serpentine dirt path into, I can't even call it a village. It was the most horrific thing I've ever seen. After 13 years in rural Cambodia, in the villages, I had never seen anything like this. The filth and the stench and the poverty and the way in which these people were living in these little mismatched huts. And he walked me over to a water pump, and he said, their water well is broken. And that was the first indication, because I was asking for signs and wonders. And so part of my initiatives all those years in Cambodia was to dig fresh water wells in the villages. Because I knew that education is great, it's one thing, but if they don't have clean water, what's the point? So I was trying to merge these initiatives together after all these years. And so I knew a thing or two about water wells. And as I looked at that and I saw what had happened and the mechanism was broken, I said, if you can take me to somebody that has these parts, we can get this fixed. And he goes, I don't know why, but I just thought you might know what to do. Because we had never talked about that. And so that was my indication that perhaps this is the area. And then in that ashram that I was staying at, there was a young man who was in graduate studies at a local university, and I just grilled him about what he wanted to do. And suffice it to say that the school has started in Bodh Gaya. And I keep thinking about that you must do the thing you think you cannot do. And thinking about Ernest Holmes' philosophy about all these hidden themes, and to not shy away from those things that feel uncomfortable, not shy away from the disappointments, not shy away from the anger, not shy away from any of that, but go and meet those things. And I realized that I had a personal agenda with that particular trip. I was traveling there with a man who had started a healing practice in Atlanta, a very famous healing practice. He was an intuitive teacher and shaman, and he had gone on this trip with me. And so at the end, the last night, we're sitting in a lobby in Delhi, and he looked at me and he said, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. He goes, what's wrong? And I said, I had an agenda with this trip for me personally. And he goes, what's that? And I explained to him that I was born with this genetic heart defect. It's the thing that my father died from. It's the thing that all my siblings died from. It's the thing that nieces and nephews have died from. And I said, I kind of just was hoping that on this trip that I would turn a corner and there would be some Swami. And he would go, booga, 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 booga. And I would have this instantaneous healing, and I could just get on with things. And I said, I'm a little ticked off that didn't happen. And I sat there in the quiet, and he was so great because he didn't say anything. He didn't try to fix it. And I just sat there, and I looked at him, and I said, no one's going to fix it, are they? And he said, nope, no one's going to fix it. I went to bed that night angry, and I had what can only be described as a lucid dream. And there I was, asleep, and I could hear this voice, and it was saying, no one's going to fix it. No one's going to fix it. No one's going to fix it. Like a chant. If it had been Karen Drucker singing, maybe it wouldn't have been so irritating. But it was like this ominous voice going, no one's going to fix it. No one's going to fix it. And it stopped, and it said, because it's not broken. And all of a sudden, this image of this huge porcelain bowl came into my mind. This beautiful, luminous porcelain bowl. And it said, you are this bowl. This bowl is whole. Now, what's inside the bowl is your defective heart. What's inside the bowl is all of the anger. What's inside the bowl is all your fears and all the messiness. What's inside the bowl is all the things within your human realm of experience that you're irritated with. That's all in the bowl. And it's never going to go away. But you are the bowl. And you get to determine whether or not you want to manage your time trying to manipulate, massage, and change the things that are in the bowl, or simply to remember that you are the bowl. And when you understand what you are, then it doesn't matter what is happening within the human experience, because there is that thing, that knowing, that determines the quality of the joy of living while all of us are in hospice. And I started to think about that, because it's that thing that you're irritated with that you just want to go away. Any of you there? I just want them to go away. I just want it to go away. And what we fail to see with that is that we're both human and spiritual. There's the humanity part of us, there's the divine part of us. And it's as if we are, it's like this line, this integration. And are you aware that both need each other? The divine needs the human in order for us to do the work that we do in the world. And what happens when we want things that are inconvenient to go away is that we're missing the opportunity to align, to integrate those two things, and to go and meet that situation, or to walk into that, to discover that we are far greater than what we have always given ourselves credit for. And so when we want to misstep that or bypass that, then we are forgetful and we're missing the grand opportunity. And so this thing, this humanity that so longs for comfort and to escape pain, is the very thing that is prompting and beckoning us into a grander experience. And that which is the divine is simply waiting for the humanity to give it permission to do that. And so as I walked away from that, I realized that I give a lot of attention, not necessarily lip service or tell anybody, but in my mind, I give a lot of attention to the fact that if this would just go away, then I could do this and this and this and this and this, without realizing that this that I have right now is so spectacular. Look at what you've done. Look at what you've done at age 54. I think I was like here 4 years ago, and I was 54, and I was going to climb Kilimanjaro, and I did. And I'm still here. I don't recommend it, but I'm still here. And I learned so much that changed my life. And I saw the trajectory of what was possible. And so this thing of why not me? I become fascinated by people who live from vision. I started investigating J.C. Penney, the actual person, J.C. Penney, who lived on 10% of his income and gave 90% away. And I went, all right, am I going to speak this? If I want, my passion right now is just this global education. How much free education can I provide? What's that going to take? Can I be like J.C. Penney and begin to prioritize my life so that everything I sell, everything that I do, all of that gets channeled towards that, and let me see what happens to this other piece of my life? And you know what's amazing? Every single time you and I say yes to something that big, it's as if the void that was there starts to fill and starts to fill and starts to fill in ways that you and I can't even begin to imagine. That's what this idea of living is. And so I want to recommend to you today that you consider not wishing the inconvenience to go away, but to sit down and go, what do you want to say to me? What's the conversation? What is the next level of livingness in this journey of hospice that we're having that I can maximize so that I can be the most optimum guest right now to all of those around me. That to me is what it means to live and to live abundantly. If you'll take a moment to close your eyes and just take a deep breath. I want you to go to that place inside that is open for consideration. It's the place within us that is beginner's mind. That place is receptive, that doesn't push grand ideas away, but says, tell me more. It's the part within us that is adventurous. It is the part within us that is willing to be that explorer. And to know that for whatever reason, to be embodied in this skin suit that we have with this personality at this place on the planet at this time is exactly what was called for. For each of us to understand our part in this grand experience called hospice. And so what will I do now? What theme will I bring to the light from my subjective mind that has told me that I can't? How will I be able to look at that with fresh eyes and a clear and pure intent? And to begin to allow just a shred of willingness for a new possibility. How will I become less passive with all of this spiritual information and move into the realm of those three powerful words that says, prove me now. Prove me now. Prove this cause and effect now. Prove me in your world, in your sphere of influence. Prove me now. And realizing that the only way that we can incrementally move into that is to be willing. We don't have to know how. We just have to show up. And so we show up today. It doesn't matter if we've been at this for decades. We just show up. And so there is that part of us, both individually and collectively, that says, yes, yes. And if you are willing and in alignment with that, I just ask that you take a breath bigger than normal. And you just expand those amazing lungs that are working even when you're not monitoring them. And you just say, thank you. And to anchor this agreement together with me, please say, and so it is. Thank you. Namaste.